The rain fell hard on the military base that night. Heavy drops crashed against the metal roofs and concrete paths. John Walker pulled his jacket closer as he walked his patrol route. The base was quiet except for the sound of rain and his boots on wet ground. That's when he heard it. A soft sound, like breaking glass, coming from behind the storage buildings. John's hand moved to his flashlight. He was a careful man. 6 years in the army had taught him to never rush into anything. The sound came again. It wasn't quite like breaking glass. It was more like crystals falling. "Hello," he called out, moving his flashlight beam across the dark space between buildings. "Is someone there?" The beam caught something that sparkled. John moved closer, his boots splashing in puddles. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. There, huddled against the wall, was a person. No, not a person. The being looked almost human, but its skin was like crystal, clear and shining, with rainbow colors dancing under the surface. And every time a raindrop hit that beautiful skin, small cracks appeared. The creature looked up at John with eyes that glowed soft blue. It made a sound of pain as more raindrops fell, creating tiny breaks across its shoulders and arms. John didn't think twice. He quickly took off his jacket and held it over the crystal being, stopping the rain from hitting it. Up close, he could see it was shaped like a young woman, but made entirely of living crystal. "You're safe now," John said softly, though he wasn't sure if she could understand him. "I won't hurt you." The crystal being reached out one delicate hand. Where the rain had hit, small pieces of her crystal skin had broken off, leaving raw patches that glowed from within. John stayed very still as her fingers touched his hand. Suddenly, his mind filled with pictures. He saw a beautiful world of crystal mountains and glowing cities. He saw strange ships attacking this world. He saw this crystal being, this young woman, escaping in a small ship. Then he saw her ship hitting Earth's atmosphere, breaking apart, falling. The touch ended. John blinked, trying to understand what he had just seen. The crystal woman was looking at him with those glowing blue eyes, and he could see fear in them. Fear and hope. "Your ship crashed," John said slowly. "You're running from someone." She nodded. She understood him. But before she could try to show him more, they both heard engines in the distance. Military vehicles getting closer. The crystal woman started to shake. More cracks appeared on her skin as she pressed herself against the wall. John knew he had to make a choice, and fast. "Listen," he said, keeping his voice calm and speaking slowly. "Those are my people coming. But I don't think you want them to find you, do you?" She shook her head. Small crystal tears formed at the corners of her eyes. "I know a safe place," John said. "My private bunker. No one else goes there." He pointed to himself, then pointed away from the sound of engines. "I can help you. Do you trust me?" The crystal woman looked at the darkness where the engines were getting louder. Then she looked back at John. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay, stay under my jacket. Try not to let the rain touch you." John helped her stand, keeping her covered. "My bunker isn't far. Just stay close to me." They moved carefully through the darkness, John using his body to shield her from the rain. Every few steps, he heard that terrible sound of crystal cracking, and he tried to cover her better with the jacket. Just as they reached the door to his bunker, bright lights swept across the base. The patrols were starting their search. John quickly opened his door and helped the crystal woman inside. In the dry safety of his bunker, he finally got a good look at her. Even with the cracks and broken pieces, she was beautiful. Her whole body seemed to glow from within, casting soft rainbow lights on the walls. She touched his hand again. This time, he saw just one word in his mind. "Crystalia," he said. "That's your name." She nodded, and for the first time she smiled. Outside, the sound of engines grew closer. John knew his quiet life had just changed forever. But looking at Crystalia, at her brave smile and glowing eyes, he knew he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. He just hoped he knew what he was getting into. John watched as Crystalia explored his bunker with curious eyes. Her crystal body cast dancing rainbows on the walls as she moved. Every few steps, small pieces of her damaged skin would fall, leaving a trail of shimmering dust behind her. The bunker wasn't much, just one room with a bed, some supplies, and old military equipment. But to Crystalia, everything seemed amazing. She touched each object gently, and each time she did, John's mind filled with questions. When she touched his radio, he saw images of her people using crystals to send thoughts across space. When she found his old compass, she showed him how her world had rivers of flowing light instead of magnetic fields. "Your whole civilization is based on crystals, isn't it?" John asked, speaking slowly and clearly. Crystalia nodded. She picked up John's canteen of water and quickly put it down, showing him why through touch. On her world, water was rare and precious, kept deep underground. Their bodies weren't made to handle it. That's why Earth's rain had hurt her so badly. A loud knock at the bunker door made them both freeze. "Walker, you in there?" It was Sergeant Mills. "Just a minute," John called out. He quickly pointed Crystalia to his storage closet. She understood and slipped inside, her glow dimming until she was almost invisible. John opened the door just enough to see out. "Yes, Sergeant. We've got strange readings all over the base, some kind of energy signature. Saw your light on. Notice anything unusual during your patrol?" John kept his face calm. "No, sir. Just rain and more rain." "Well, keep your eyes open. And what's that shining stuff on your floor?" John looked down. Crystal dust from Crystalia's broken skin sparkled on the ground. "Oh, that. Been testing some new emergency flares, sir. They leave residue." Mills frowned but nodded. "Clean it up, Walker, and file a report next time you test equipment." After Mills left, John quickly swept up the crystal dust. But when he touched it, something strange happened. The dust glowed and moved on its own, floating up and back to Crystalia as she stepped out of the closet. She touched his hand to explain. The crystal dust was part of her, like blood or skin cells. Her body could call it back and heal itself. But the process was slow, and she was still badly hurt from the rain. "You need help," John said. "Real medical help. But I don't know how." Crystalia's touch showed him more. On her world, healing chambers used concentrated light to repair crystal bodies. John looked around his bunker, then at his collection of old equipment. An idea formed. "Wait here," he told her, and ran to the base's maintenance shed. He returned with UV lamps used for growing plants in winter. When he set them up around Crystalia, her whole body began to glow brighter. Over the next few hours, John watched in amazement as her crystal skin slowly repaired itself. The cracks sealed up, broken pieces reformed. Under the UV light, she looked like a living diamond, perfectly whole again. But their moment of peace didn't last. Crystalia suddenly grabbed John's arm, her touch filling his mind with warning. He saw ships, the same ones that had attacked her world, moving through space, getting closer to Earth. "They followed you," John whispered. "They're coming here." Crystalia's eyes glowed with fear and determination. She showed John one more vision, of her people being captured and broken apart, their living crystal used to power massive weapons. That's when the base's alarm sirens began to wail. Through the bunker's small window, John saw troops running, vehicles moving. Someone had found something, maybe pieces of Crystalia's crashed ship. He looked at Crystalia, who stood tall despite her fear. She was a refugee, running from monsters who would break her into pieces, and now she was his responsibility. "Whatever those ships want," John said firmly, "they'll have to get through me first." Crystalia smiled at his words. She touched his hand one last time, showing him not the past or the future, but what she felt right now. Gratitude, trust, and something else. Something warm and growing, like a crystal catching its first ray of light. Outside, the sirens kept wailing. The hunt was about to begin. The next morning, the base was buzzing with activity. Teams of scientists and military personnel swarmed the area where Crystalia's ship had crashed. John watched from his patrol route, trying to look normal while his heart raced. In his earpiece, he could hear the radio chatter. Unknown material found in Sector 7. Energy readings off the charts. Possible extraterrestrial origin. Back in his bunker, Crystalia was doing something incredible. She had found an old broken radio and was transforming it. Her touch turned metal into crystal, reshaping it into something new. When John returned from his patrol, she showed him what she'd made. A small crystal that could warn them when her enemies were near. Like an early warning system, John said, amazed as the crystal pulsed with soft light. Crystalia's touch explained more. Her people called it a heart stone. It could detect others of her kind, and those who hunted them. But they had a bigger problem. Colonel Roberts had ordered a full inspection of all buildings and bunkers, starting tomorrow. They needed a better hiding place. That's when Crystalia showed John something astonishing. She pressed her hands against his bunker wall, and slowly, the concrete began to crystallize. Within minutes, she had created a hidden chamber, a space between spaces, where the walls looked solid but were actually crystal mirrors. That's impossible, John whispered, but he was learning that impossible didn't mean much anymore. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the heartstone flashing red. Through touch, Crystalia shared a vision. 3 crystal beings like her, but corrupted, their bodies dark and jagged. They were called hunters, changed by the pirates to track down their own kind. They're here? On Earth. John felt cold fear in his stomach. Crystalia nodded. She showed him more. How the hunters could sense crystal energy. They would be drawn to the crash site, but they would also sense her. John's radio crackled. All personnel, report to the main yard. Immediate assembly. At the assembly, Colonel Roberts stood before the troops. 3 hours ago, we detected 3 objects entering Earth's atmosphere. They appeared to be pods of some kind. We have reason to believe they're connected to the crash site we found. John tried not to react as Roberts continued. We also found this. On a screen behind him, an image appeared. A piece of crystal that glowed from within. Our scientists say it's not just crystal. It's alive. The crowd murmured. John felt sweat on his forehead. If you see anything unusual, anything at all, report it immediately. Dismissed. Back in the bunker, Crystalia was agitated. The heartstone was pulsing faster. She touched John's hand, showing him a new vision. The hunters weren't just tracking her. They were changing the crash site, corrupting it, using it to create something dark. But then something unexpected happened. As Crystalia pulled her hand away, John saw something new. A vision he was creating. For a brief moment, Crystalia looked startled. Did you see that? John asked. From my mind. She nodded slowly. Their connection was growing stronger. Somehow, John was learning to communicate like her people did. Their discovery was cut short by heavy footsteps outside. Through the window, they saw a terrifying sight. A tall, dark figure made of black crystal, its body sharp and jagged. A hunter. It walked past the bunker, leaving trails of corruption where it stepped, turning the ground into dark crystal. The hunter paused, turning its head toward their bunker. John and Crystalia held their breath. The crystal mirrors Crystalia had created bent the light around them, hiding them from view. After what felt like forever, the hunter moved on. But they both knew it would be back. The heartstone's warning pulse was getting stronger. Crystalia touched John's hand one last time that night. She showed him what would happen if the hunters succeeded. They would corrupt Earth's natural crystals, creating a network that would let the pirates track and capture every crystal being in the galaxy. We can't let that happen, John said firmly. But how do we stop 3 hunters? Crystalia's answer came in images. She needed to teach John more about crystal energy. If he could learn to communicate through touch, maybe he could learn to do more. much more. Outside, dark crystal continued to spread from the crash site, creeping across the base like a disease. Time was running out. And somewhere in the darkness, 3 hunters searched, their corrupted bodies pulsing with dark energy, getting closer to their prey with every step. Morning arrived with a blood-red sunrise. The dark crystal corruption had spread further overnight, forming jagged spires around the crash site. Scientists in hazmat suits took readings while armed guards watched nervously. John hurried to his bunker after the night shift, his mind racing. The base inspection would start in 1 hour, but something else worried him more. During his patrol, he had seen all 3 hunters gathering at the crash site, performing some kind of crystal ritual. Inside the bunker, he found Crystalia doing something extraordinary. She had transformed his small metal desk into a crystal interface, similar to the technology from her world. Her fingers danced across its surface, creating patterns of light. "What is it?" John asked, but before she could touch him to explain, the heartstone flashed a new color, deep purple. Through their growing bond, John received broken images. The hunters weren't just tracking Crystalia. They were building something, a beacon. If completed, it would call their pirate masters to Earth. "We have to stop them," John said. "But first, we need to survive this inspection." Crystalia nodded. She pressed her hands to the crystal mirror walls she had created, and they watched as the hidden chamber expanded, creating a network of light-bending spaces throughout the bunker. To anyone else, the bunker would appear empty and normal. But they had another problem. The corruption was affecting Crystalia. Small patches of darkness had appeared on her crystal skin where she had used her powers too much. Through touch, she explained, the hunter's presence was poisoning all crystal energy nearby. A sharp knock made them both jump. "Inspection time, Walker." It was Colonel Roberts himself. John quickly nodded to Crystalia, who slipped into the hidden crystal network. He opened the door. Roberts entered with 2 scientists and a guard. They carried strange devices that beeped and whirred. "These sensors detect unusual energy signatures," Roberts explained, "like what we found at the crash site." John tried to stay calm as they swept the bunker. The sensors squealed near the walls where Crystalia had created the crystal mirrors. But instead of exposing their secret, something amazing happened. The dark patches on Crystalia's skin had an unexpected benefit. They absorbed the sensors' scanning waves. The scientists looked confused as their readings went haywire. "Some kind of interference," one scientist muttered. "These readings make no sense." But then one of them spotted something. A tiny shard of pure crystal on the floor, one that hadn't been corrupted. The sensor locked onto it, beeping loudly. Roberts picked up the crystal shard. "Care to explain this, Walker?" Before John could answer, the base's alarms exploded into life. Through the window, they saw why. The hunter's beacon was growing, a massive spire of dark crystal reaching toward the sky. "Everyone to battle stations," Roberts shouted, running out with his team. As soon as they left, Crystalia emerged, but she looked different. The dark patches had spread, and her once bright glow was dimming. She touched John's hand weakly, showing him what was happening. The beacon wasn't just calling the pirates, it was draining all crystal energy on Earth to power itself, including Crystalia's life force. Then something unexpected happened. Where John's hand met Crystalia's corrupted crystal skin, a soft golden light appeared. His touch was somehow purifying the darkness. "My touch, it heals you?" John asked, amazed. Crystalia's eyes widened in realization. She showed him one final vision. On her world, there were legends of other species who could channel pure crystal energy. Humans must have had this ability, dormant until now. But before they could explore this discovery, the heartstone flashed bright red. Through their bond, they both saw it. The hunters had sensed the pure crystal energy, and now they were coming. All 3 of them. Outside, the dark crystal beacon pulsed with evil light, growing stronger every second. The corruption spread faster now, crawling up walls and across the ground. Time was running out. John looked at his hand, still glowing softly where he had touched Crystalia's corruption. Then he looked at her, seeing determination in her luminous eyes, despite her weakened state. "I guess it's time to test these new powers," he said grimly. "Ready?" Crystalia nodded, her crystal skin chiming softly as she stood straighter. Above them, the blood-red sky grew darker as the beacon called to the pirate ships hidden in space. The final battle was about to begin. The three hunters moved through the base like living shadows, their corrupted crystal bodies absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Where they walked, dark crystals spread like veins through the concrete, all flowing toward their massive beacon that now pierced the crimson sky. John and Crystalia watched from their hiding spot behind crystallized walls. The few soldiers who tried to stop the hunters learned a horrible truth. One touch from their corrupted forms began to crystallize living tissue. "Base command, we have 3 casualties," a voice crackled over John's radio. "Men are turning to crystal. Request immediate backup." Crystalia touched John's hand, sharing a desperate plan. The golden glow where their skin met grew stronger. His newfound ability to purify corruption might be their only hope. But to use it effectively, they would need to get closer to the beacon. Suddenly, the ground shook. The dark crystal beacon had begun its final phase, shooting a beam of purple energy into the sky. Through their bond, they both felt what it meant. Pirate ships were now locked onto Earth's location. That's when Colonel Roberts' voice boomed over the base speakers. "Attention all personnel. We've detected multiple objects entering orbit. They appear to be ships." A pause. "We are no longer alone." As chaos erupted across the base, something extraordinary happened. The corruption spreading from the hunter's beacon reached a natural crystal deposit deep underground. The reaction created a massive crystal growth that burst from the earth, lifting part of the base into the air. Through their connected minds, Crystalia showed John what was happening. The pirates weren't just coming for her. They wanted to turn Earth into a crystal mining operation, starting with this base. "Walker," Roberts' voice came from behind them. He stood with a squad of soldiers, all weapons raised. "Step away from that thing." "Sir, you don't understand," John started, but then he saw the crystal corruption creeping up Roberts' arm where he had touched the shard earlier. The colonel was turning. Crystalia acted fast. She touched the corruption on Roberts and then grabbed John's hand. Together, their combined powers, her crystal control and his purifying touch, pulled the darkness from Roberts' arm. The colonel stared at his restored arm in shock. What are you?" Before they could explain, one of the hunters crashed through the wall. Its corrupted form had grown massive, feeding off the beacon's power. But as it reached for them, something unexpected happened. The darkness consuming Crystalia suddenly flowed out of her, forming a crystal barrier between them and the hunter. She was using the corruption itself as a weapon. "Sir," John said quickly to Roberts, "those ships up there, they want to turn Earth into a crystal farm. But we can stop them. Crystalia knows how." Through their mental bond, Crystalia shared the full plan. The hunter's beacon was like a crystal computer. If they could reach its core, their combined powers might be able to reprogram it, turn its signal from a beacon into a weapon against the pirate ships. Roberts looked at his restored arm, then at the hunter trying to break through Crystalia's barrier. "What do you need?" "Coverage," John said. "We need to reach that beacon's core. And sir, your men can't let the hunters touch them." Roberts nodded grimly. "All units," he spoke into his radio. "Protect Walker and the friendly crystal being. They're our only shot at stopping this." As they moved out, Crystalia shared one last vision with John. If they succeeded in reprogramming the beacon, its power would affect all crystal beings in range, including her. She might not survive. John squeezed her crystal hand, golden light pulsing where they touched. "We'll find another way," he promised. Above them, The first pirate ships became visible through the blood-red clouds, massive crystal-powered vessels descending toward Earth. The corrupted beacon pulsed stronger, pulling more crystal deposits from deep underground, transforming the landscape. 3 hunters, 1 beacon, and an alien invasion force against 2 beings who could channel pure crystal energy. The odds weren't good. But as John looked at Crystalia, seeing fierce determination in her glowing eyes, he knew they had something the pirates and their hunters would never understand. A connection that transcended species, stronger than any crystal. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The base had become a crystal battlefield. Soldiers fired at the hunters from behind barriers of pure crystal that Crystalia had created, while corrupted crystal spires erupted from the ground like black thorns. Above, 3 massive pirate ships hovered, their hulls covered in pulsing purple crystals. But John and Crystalia had discovered something the pirates never expected. As they ran toward the beacon, John's touch continued healing patches of corruption on her body. Each purified area began to glow with new colors, not just her usual blue, but rainbow patterns that rippled with power. "The corruption," John said between breaths, "it's making you stronger." Crystalia's touch shared the truth. The hunters' attempts to poison crystal energy had backfired. By learning to purify corruption, they had unlocked ancient crystal powers not seen since her world's earliest days. A hunter burst from the ground before them, its jagged body twice its original size. But before it could strike, Colonel Roberts's voice rang out, "Light them up." UV cannons, hastily modified from the base's greenhouse equipment, blasted the hunter. The pure light weakened its corrupted form, giving Crystalia an opening. She touched the ground, and pure crystal spears shot up through the hunter's body. But instead of destroying it, Crystalia did something more remarkable. She began to purify the hunter itself. Through their mental bond, John saw what she was attempting. The hunter had once been like her, a crystal being twisted by the pirates. With John's purifying touch and her crystal control, they might save it. The hunter thrashed as golden light spread from Crystalia's crystal spears through its corrupted body. Its jagged edges began to smooth dark purple, fading to clear crystal. Suddenly, the beacon pulsed. All the corruption they had cleaned suddenly turned dark again. The beacon was amplifying the pirates' control. "We need to shut it down now," Roberts shouted, pointing to the ships above. "They're positioning for something big." He was right. The pirate ships had arranged themselves in a triangle above the base, purple energy building between them. Through their connection, Crystalia showed John what it meant. They were preparing to crystallize the entire area, turning everyone into corrupted crystal slaves. That's when John had an idea. "The hunter, when we purified it, I saw something. Crystalia, show me its memories." She understood. Touching the struggling hunter together, they dove into its mind. They saw how the beacon worked, how the pirates controlled it, and most importantly, its weakness. The hunter's memories revealed a shocking truth. The pirates weren't the true masters of crystal technology. They had stolen it from a hidden library on Crystalia's world, but they didn't fully understand it. Their control relied on brute force, corrupting crystal energy rather than working with it. "The beacon," John said, "it's like a crystal computer running their corrupt code. But if we could rewrite it." Crystalia's eyes glowed brighter. Through their bond, she showed him her plan. It was dangerous, possibly fatal. She would need to connect directly to the beacon, using herself as a conduit for pure crystal energy. John's touch would have to purify the energy as it flowed through her, or the corruption would destroy her. "No," John started to protest, but more memories from the hunter flooded their minds. They saw entire worlds turn to corrupt crystal, billions enslaved. Earth would be next. Colonel Roberts approached, his men holding off the other 2 hunters with UV cannons. "Whatever you're planning, do it fast. We can't hold them much longer." Above, the pirate ship's energy triangle began to pulse faster. Time was running out. Crystalia touched John's face gently, sharing not just thoughts but feelings. Trust, hope, something deeper. Then she ran toward the beacon, her body glowing with rainbow light. The remaining hunters tried to stop her, but the partially purified hunter suddenly turned on its corrupted brothers. As they fought, Crystalia reached the beacon's base. She plunged her hands into the dark crystal, connecting to its core. Corruption instantly began spreading up her arms. "Now, John," Roberts shouted. "Whatever you're going to do it now." John ran to Crystalia, placed his hands on her shoulders, and channeled every bit of purifying energy he could summon. Golden light exploded from his touch. The battle for Earth's future had come down to this moment. One human's pure touch against an alien corruption threatened to consume everything. Above them, the pirate ships began their final attack. Golden light met corrupted purple energy as John poured his purifying power into Crystalia. The beacon pulsed between them, its dark crystal core fighting against their combined strength. Above, the pirate ship's energy triangle released its beam. But something extraordinary happened when the beam struck. Instead of corrupting the area, it met a shield of pure crystal energy radiating from Crystalia and John. Where the energies collided, time itself seemed to slow. Through their mental bond, now stronger than ever, they shared a vision of what was really happening. The pirate's beam wasn't just hitting their shield, it was being transformed. Every particle of corrupt energy that touched their combined power was being purified, creating a cascade effect that traveled up the beam toward the ships. A partially purified hunter suddenly spoke, its voice like chiming crystals. "The ancient protocol. They've awakened it." Through the hunter's restored memories, they saw the truth. Crystal beings weren't meant to be weapons or power sources. They were guardians, created to protect life across the galaxy from forces that would corrupt and destroy. Crystalia's body began to change as this ancient knowledge flowed through her. Her crystal form grew, becoming a towering figure of pure light. John's touch remained constant, their combined power growing stronger as she accessed her true heritage. The remaining corrupted hunters charged, but the reformed hunter met them with new power. "Remember who we were," it sang in its crystal voice. "Remember our purpose." The pirate ships tried to retreat, but it was too late. The purifying wave reached them, and their stolen crystal technology began to transform. Dark purple crystals turned clear, then bloomed with rainbow light. Inside the ships, the pirates watched in horror as their corrupted crystal slaves awakened to their true nature. Crystal beings throughout their fleet began to break free, their natural powers restored. But the energy drain was taking its toll on Crystalia. Her massive form began to crack, light pouring from the fissures. John felt her weakening through their bond. "No," he whispered. "There has to be another way." That's when Colonel Roberts and his men did something unexpected. They approached the beacon, having seen how John's touch could channel crystal energy. "We're here to help," Roberts said. "Tell us what to do." One by one, they placed their hands on the beacon alongside John. Pure human touch met crystal energy, and golden light spread from person to person. They weren't as strong as John, but together. Crystalia's voice rang in all their minds. "The ancient protocol requires balance. Life touching light, organic meeting crystal. This was how it was meant to be." The purifying wave grew stronger as more soldiers joined, forming a chain of humanity channeling pure energy. The corrupted hunters finally broke free, their bodies returning to pure crystal. But the pirates had one last desperate move. They overloaded their ship's crystal cores, trying to create an explosion that would corrupt everything. Crystalia acted instantly. She drew in the explosive energy, her massive crystal form absorbing the blast. For a moment, she shone brighter than the sun. "No," John reached for her through their bond. Instead of fighting the energy, he helped her channel it. Together, they sent it harmlessly into space, where it burst into a shower of rainbow crystal shards that rained down like stars. The battle was over. The pirate ships hung powerless in the sky, their stolen technology now purified, and under the control of the freed crystal beings. The dark beacon had transformed into a spire of pure crystal, humming with ancient power. Crystalia's giant form dissolved, crystals falling away until she stood before them in her original size. But she was changed. Patterns of golden light, the same light as John's touch, now flowed permanently through her crystal body. "You're still here," John said in relief. "But how?" She touched his hand, sharing the truth. The ancient protocol wasn't just about crystal beings protecting life. It was about life and crystal existing in harmony. Her kind needed organic life just as much as organic life needed them. The reformed hunters bowed to her. "We remember now," they said. "We will return to our true purpose. Earth must be protected." Colonel Roberts stepped forward. "I think that can be arranged." He looked at John and Crystalia. "I believe this is the beginning of a much bigger story." Crystalia's touch showed them all a vision of the future, crystal technology used properly, helping humanity reach the stars. Ships of pure crystal working in harmony with human crews. A new age of exploration and protection. John smiled as he felt the golden light still flowing between them. Their connection had not just saved Earth, it had restored an ancient balance and opened up an entirely new future. Above them, the crystal rain continued to fall, each pure shard catching the light of a new dawn.